So let's take a look what we're aiming to achieve today. So what we're going to do is we're going to send a notification from our server, that's our SvelteKit backend, to the Apple or Google servers, depending on the device type, and then the phone or computer will have a notification displayed. This is really useful as, for example, you know from any messenger, as when somebody else is sending a message, the server gets this and then pushes a notification to the recipient, so he's immediately aware of it. So it's the same as it works for mobile apps, just in our case we use it for a website. And cool thing also is the website does not need to be opened at that point, just the browser needs to be active. And additionally, we're not using any like third-party service. We're running this from our own server, so it's really easy and cheaply to implement. So we're implementing the push notifications into our SvelteKit demo app. It's a music store of some sort. I built it in different tutorials. You can check out the playlist in the description below. And note that any code I wrote here is also on GitHub. You can check out the code in more detail there, also in the description. But first I added this settings page if we are logged in. And here I have this push notification section that tells us receive notifications when new albums are updated. When albums are updated. This does make sense. Okay, so here we have this button to enable notifications, and that's one thing we have to do is we actually, not every website is allowed to push any notifications to the client. The user has to allow it that the browser sends notifications for this website to reduce spam. So what we do here in our Svelte component on mount, so this runs when the page is loaded on the client, we check if notification, that's a global window object, .permission equals granted. If this is true, we can now, okay, the user has already give us the permission. And if this is not the case, like it's currently for us, I implemented a button here, and on click we call this function here where we just call notification.request permission. Then this pop-up will come here. Also depends on the type of browser you use, but I can say block or allow, and we now have here given the permission. So I could have clicked blocked. This is why we received this object here only if I actually granted the permission. We then push a notification here, and we can already see that here. So we got this new notification. But the thing is, this isn't a push notification yet. This is just a normal notification. I think they are rather useless, unfortunately. So you can only call them from within the app. So if you click on something or if you just fetch some data, but I think this kind of stuff doesn't make sense to do a system notification. We could do like an in the website alert or something, because the notifications of our operation system here, they are we have to clear them manually. So if you push a lot of notifications, the user is cluttered with this stuff. So now we have the permission granted. We now need to do the push notification stuff, which is more complex. To get a more of a grasp of it, I'm gonna show you first how this will work in the background. So first, what we need to do, we actually generate a private public vapid keys pair. That's just keys for security, so that actually it's clear that you only send messages to people who want to get push messages, and also no one else can send the push messages on your behalf. That's why we have a private key, and VAPID stands for Voluntary Application Identification. So how are we gonna use them? So first we have our app and a service worker. A service worker is like a separate script you can register in your app that is capable of running in the background, and you can do a lot of awesome stuff with it, like offline functionalities and stuff, and it's also necessary for notifications. So first, the public key, it's called public, so it's okay to share it. The private one you shouldn't share. We're gonna ask for it in the front end, so we just call an endpoint, get the public key, get it back to the app, and then we're gonna ask our service worker to create a push subscription. So this then creates a new subscription key with the public key, and we're gonna get that returned to our app. And then we're gonna use that subscription information. It also has, for example, the URL we need to call to actually push a notification to the device, and we then send it back to the server, and we need to store it there. So if we then at one point want to send a notification to this device, we need to have that subscription information to be able to do so. But that's the flow, and now we need to implement that in our app. So first, on our backend, what we're gonna do, we need new dependencies. So first we're going to add web push. That's a nice npm package to help us manage sending out the notifications. We don't have to do that ourselves then. We also want the types for it, as I'm using TypeScript. And now we need to generate the private and public key. For that we can just call yarn web push, generate vapid keys. If you have used npm, for example, instead of yarn, you can call npx. So what we're gonna see here now in the output below, let me make that bigger, we get a public and a private key. The thing is, they're completely random, so anytime I call this, I will wait, not that one, I will get like different results, or at least pseudo-random, that it's not on every device there's like one key, you can regenerate them. So let's store them. We need them later in the app. So as for example, the private key is a secret, no one else should know that, I'm gonna put them in my .env file. So I first here store the public key and this one here, and the private key, let me copy that here. And yeah, after this tutorial is done, I'm gonna of course delete the keys, the private key, as I have shown it here. I can't use it anymore. So we're set up. Now we need to, as I told you, in here, we need to be able to give the public key to the app. So we're gonna create a new route. So let me check, where do I create it? So it's just not a page, it's just get to get the key. So we're gonna create a new API folder, and I call it vapid pub key, and in there I'm gonna create a plus server.ts. So this is just an endpoint, basically a REST service endpoint. And what we're gonna do here is we define a get route for this route, and we return a JSON with the data and the public key in here. Wonderful. Okay, I don't know why TypeScript is giving me an error, but I guess it's resolving if I reload the window, so nothing to think about. Already tested this. So what we could do now is we can call API/vapid_pub_key, and we get this JSON back of our public key. Wonderful. So now we actually need to implement the rest of this workflow. So back on our settings page, we now need to add functionality to generate a subscription with the public key. So I'm going to create a function for that. It's called subscribe user. And first we check like if we have a service worker running. In SvelteKit, you should have this service worker TS file sitting in the root. Till now, there doesn't need to be anything specific in there, but we're gonna add something later. And first we're gonna do a try catch block, and we are gonna put an error message if something gets wrong here. And First, we're gonna fetch our implemented endpoints to get the public key, get the JSON from that, and then we wait till our service worker is ready. So it can have different statuses, and if it's doing some setup work, it's not ready yet, so we wait till it's ready. And then we can generate a subscription. So we, from the registration we receive from the service worker, we can then call the push manager and then call .subscribe. We always have to set user visible only to true. I actually don't know why we all the examples use that. I'm actually not sure what this does. Let me know in the comments if you know for sure. And then we're gonna pass the key in there, the public key. If we're done, we can also log that, and at a later point here we will send this subscription to the backend to store it, as I showed you before. Also, to debug this to the UI, I'm going to create a is subscribed variable, and use that here, and then we can down there also show our subscription status. So currently we are not subscribed because we don't call the function. So when we can recall the function, we do that when we just open the page. But first we only need to do this once, so we can also make a function to check if we are already subscribed. So this is called check subscription status. We also check for the service worker. We again get this registration, and then we can call get subscription. We log it, and then we it's basically tell if it's null, we are not subscribed yet, so return false. Otherwise, we return true. And now in the on mount, we can then check after we also make sure the first thing we did was allow the browser to actually send any notifications. Only if this is granted, then we need to run the other checks. So what we can do now is, if it is granted, we can call our check subscription status. If it is subscribed, we need to do nothing, otherwise we subscribe the user. So let's see how this looks. So you can see it's already changed to true, and in the check there was nothing before, but after we called subscribe user, we get this info here, and let me make that even bigger so we can take a look of it. So we get the endpoint. This is a user specific URL we need to call when we want to do a notification. Expiration time is always null, at least in Chrome for me, and the keys are like the crypto stuff to make sure we have the right user, and I can't just copy this URL to another app I use and send notifications to the same device. So it's only working with our Webkit private key to send notifications to this one. Okay, that's great. So now we have that. We can go ahead and implement the saving logic to save the subscription info. So I'm gonna skip over most of the code required to store all the subscriptions. Instead, I'm just going to give you this visual overview. So first we want an API that basically tells us add user device, so we can store for a username, for a logged in user, its subscription details, and also we want to have channels. And I would say I defined it myself, but a channel is something you want to get notifications about. You don't always want to notify a specific user, but for our example, users can opt in to receive notifications when an album is updated, and then they subscribe to the channel called, for example, album update, like a generic thing, or album update and then album ID or something. So basically they subscribe to an interest. and then they can also like get notified for the channel. And I just go over the data model. I'm using SQLite to store the subscriptions. I'm a relational guy, so I'm just having a users table with a username. That's our login name, basically. And then we have the user devices table that for each device has a username and a device ID. That's just an auto-generated primary key and the subscription JSON information. And then we have the channels. Channel has a name as an ID, a string, and we have users in a channel. And then we have this logging table here that's going to where we store like every notification we're going to send, and we store like all the reference. So if it was in a channel, it has a primary key auto incremented again, creation date, device ID, payload is like the text content of the notification, HTTP status code, so we can like see which one are failing, and generally a success, and also an error message. I haven't showed that here, so let's quickly add that. Okay, great, this is the model, and now I'm going to show you how we can call that. So this is a huge database file where I basically implemented the data model and the API, and so we can skip the tables, but something I want to show you is how we first have to initialize the web push notifications. So we use this web push library we also used before to generate our keys, and we call set webit details here. We first have to pass like a way to like get notified, or somebody can message us if there's something going wrong. And also I'm going to pass the public and the private key here from our .env file. Then I have this generic send notification function where we just get the subscription details and payload, that's basically the notification text. And we can then call webpush.sendNotification with both, and we can then check the status code. If it's 201, everything's fine. If it isn't, we can then look at the status code and the body. Also, you should wrap this in a try catch, because sometimes this library throws when there's something going on or going wrong, and we can then also like treat that. I have like another wrapper around this where we pass an array of devices, and for each we're going to call our send notification function, and then we're going to insert into our log table. And we also like specifically handle this for 10 status, and this is at least from Apple. They have this list of status codes they're going to send out, and for 10 is for an expired device token, and for that case we can't send any notifications to that device anymore, so we just delete it. Yeah, then we have like the functions for add user device and so on, add users to channel. And I also implemented an API endpoint, another one, to store the subscription. So it's a post, and we get the username from the locals. That's basically where we get the details for logged in users. And we get the data. The data should have the subscription information. And then we can call just add user device. Okay, so next up, we can also make our service worker ready for receiving notifications. So the service worker is the one who will actually get the message. So we need to add an event listener to it for the event push, and then we can extract the payload text, and then we can call this thing event wait until, and then show notification on the registration object. And we pass the app name first. I would say in most cases this should be static, and then we can pass the payload as a body. And now your service worker is ready to show notifications actually. You can't add any logic in here. For example, you can't like decide, should I really display this notification? As I read in the article, Apple will punish you if you don't show every notification. Okay. So next up, we're going to take a look at how this whole thing works, and we can to implement like saving the subscription. So as we are currently already subscribed, but we haven't sent the subscription object back to the client, I'm going to make a small functionality to unsubscribe again. I think it's also nice for users to be able to control if they want to stop receiving notifications. And so we can go to our code, and we have this is subscribed, and we can down here do another if. If is subscribed, we can make a button for unsubscribe, and unsubscribe is fairly straightforward. We can just again get the registration from service worker, get the subscription information, and then we can call unsubscribe for it. So let's test this out. So this is true. If I click unsubscribe, this is false. And of course, if I reload it, it's still the same. Great. And now we also need, if I now, because when I reloaded it, it's going to create a new subscription, of course. So now we also, of course, want to send the subscription to the server to store it there. And we can create a function for that here. And we're going to pass the subscription information. We're going to fetch our endpoint we just created, post application JSON as a content type, and just pass the subscription as a body. And if there's something going on, we unsubscribe again, so we can't, if the server hasn't received it, we can't use it basically. Okay, and so when we need to call that, so when we do the subscribe user thing, we can then call send subscription to server. And if we now look, that was too fast, but if I can unsubscribe and reload, we can see add subscription is actually failing unauthorized. I'm somewhat logged out again. Messed up with the database file, I guess. And now we are subscribed, and we still haven't seen it. So let's reload. Add subscription succeeded. We can actually also look at the database file. It's stored in data. Reveal, and here, let me quickly open that, and what you can see in there is basically that we have now a device, actually two, from the first time it worked, with the JSON we also generated. So notice as I unsubscribed here, and so resubscribed, I get a new unique URL for that. And so one thing you can also do if you unsubscribe is create an endpoint to delete the subscription from the database. But what I'm going to do is do like a check later on. If like the last 3 times I called a device, it failed, I just deleted it then. Both are feasible, I guess. But like the delete after 3 failed attempts also works like in cases where like device doesn't exist anymore, or something where the user doesn't explicitly click on unsubscribe. So I use that approach. Also, what I'm going to do is actually here to keep it in sync. So I don't know, I think there are some like conditions, I don't know, maybe a browser data is deleted or something, website is resetted on the client. So in that case, we want to resend like the subscription info and then validate it again. So I think the case where something goes wrong and we don't send any notifications is bad. So rather double check a few times if it's still the current subscription info there. So in here, if we check, like every time we load, we check if the subscription exists. We send it another time in there, and I have like in the database logic a check to just see if it's already existing, it's fine, and if not, inserted it. So now, even though we have a subscription, we can see that we call add subscription again. Also notice, so one thing I had to debug a little bit is we updated Service Worker before. And if you go to the Chrome DevTools or Firefox application, you can see the Service Worker page here. It's not live yet, so it's kind of complicated. You can't just change a running, or it's not feasible to change a running Service Worker for a page. So the browsers deal it a little bit complex that at some later point they're going to switch to the new Service Worker, and this causes us currently, I think when we call this push test, we don't get any notifications, but we have to call the skip waiting. So we now manually switch to the new Service Worker, and now we actually do get the notification here. Test push from DevTools. Cool. Great. So this works. Now we actually can take a look like at a small overview how this whole thing works. So what we're actually doing now is when a user or we click a button to trigger a notification, the app is going to trigger SvelteKit route. The SvelteKit route in this case is adding an album or updating, doesn't matter. It's going to first go to the database and do the update, and also after that, if it's finished, like we say, okay, now we need to send out the notifications. So we ask our notification service, get me all the user devices that are subscribed to this event, and for each one we're going to send out a notification. This will be from our backend first to the Apple servers, but they will then call our service worker, and the service worker will then display our notification. So great. We have also the API methods here. First, notify user to just send in a notification for other device the user has, or like a notification channel. Like I said, if you're interested in a specific thing, like get all updates to albums, you can also like send out not user specific but interest specific notifications. So let's implement like a small test notification. So I implemented a server TS file for the current page, and there just added an action to send a notification to the current user. This is a test notification, and I also like added a button for it so we can trigger it. And also importantly, I added the function I told you about, delete if expired. So I just query like the last 3 notifications of our log table if they were successful, and if none of them were successful, I'm going to delete the user device, and I call that like after handling the 410 status. Great. So we can now test this out. So we have this test notification page here, and if everything works, we should now, when I call this, we get here this is a test notification. Great. We should also like we actually here, because we already had like the expired thing there, because we changed resubscribed, we also deleted our first invalid subscription, because I think we already tried to send notifications to it. We can also look at the log table, and I think it received a 210 then. Okay. or actually because we never really send out notification to it, that's also making sense. Okay, great, our logic seems to work. And now we can like implement logic to, we could like do the channel subscription stuff. So what I just did is to in the endpoint where we add a subscription and basically add a new device, I also automatically add the user to the album updates channel, and then on the page action where we update an album title, I just call our notification channel function with the channel album updates and put the message album updated to album title. I also like opened a Safari and opened the same website, and in there we can subscribe to notifications as a different user. So we can show you quickly here. I'm logged in as an Apple user. I'm subscribed, and if I now go ahead and I already tested it here, update an album, click update, you can see in my notification center here, I got the message in the same browser. So yeah, in a real production system, you would like not send it to yourself who did the update, but more importantly, I also got the one in Safari. That's cool. And yeah, that's basically it. It also works on mobile, at least currently. Apple is like, unfortunately, in Europe currently removing the functionality to receive notifications. That's horrible, and they have some bullshit reasons. Basically, they now are forced to offer different browser engines, and they don't like that because they like more getting money. And with different browser engines, their monopoly on App Store is challenged, and maybe people switch to web apps where they don't have to pay through Apple Pay, and as a consequence they said, yeah, then we just disable PWAs and with that notifications. But I hope they get challenged on that, and the EU will give a fat punishment for them. Nonetheless, I think this is really useful, and it's great that you can self-host doing this. I have also hosted this app on my domain, so you can test it out with your devices. Check out the description for that. Check out the code also in the description. And if you have any questions or feedback, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy your day. Goodbye.